in Asia, we have a process of electing the member for the Permanent Forum. And of course, you know that it is actually the mandate of the President of the Economic and Social Council of the UN who appoints the members, but he appoints in consultation with indigenous organizations. So what we do in Asia is we generally have a process, and it can be voting through, nowadays it is through the email or fax. And so indigenous organizations from the different countries of Asia, they can register. There is like an election commission where neutral people run this process, and then indigenous organizations vote. So this has happened from the very beginning of the Permanent Forum, when Parshuram Tamang from Nepal was elected as the first member, and then later on we have Vicky Taudi Borpuz. So Parshuram was vice chair, and Vicky was chair, and so we have this process, and we are very happy and proud that we have a consultative process where the member is elected by the indigenous people, formally appointed by the President of the ECOSOC. Now, of course, there are many issues for the Asian indigenous peoples, and we hope that, of course, that we can make use of the Permanent Forum to the optimum levels, so that within its mandated subjects of human rights, economic, social, cultural development, education, that we can take forward the indigenous people's issues. But of course, it is not just the recommendations, for example, of the forum, which actually make an impact on how things are on the ground. It is also how we actually engage with the other observers in the Permanent Forum, the states members of the Permanent Forum, and then there are the very important is the United Nations agencies who are also there. So the challenge, I think, is most importantly is how do we get the governments, particularly the governments of Asia, to engage with indigenous peoples, have dialogues with indigenous peoples. So the forum, apart from taking formal recommendations which are addressed to the UN system through the Economic and Social Council, but also provides a healthy atmosphere of dialogue. Like from Bangladesh, sometimes when we go, the indigenous people's delegation, we also meet the ambassador of Bangladesh and other members of the mission. So the whole idea, of course, is that the change happens at home. But of course, as is the tradition with human rights bodies and other mechanisms within the United Nations, if you don't get the remedy at home, then this is the understanding of international human rights law, that different countries and other UN agencies, indigenous peoples, NGOs sit together to discuss the issue so that you can promote and protect human rights. And I think that, so as I go back, I say that one of the challenges is to have more and more government participation in the Permanent Forum's meetings. And so there is more engagement between indigenous people and governments, so that this helps trigger off more avenues of dialogue. And we see some of this happening, for example, in the climate change process, that environment ministries and indigenous people and NGOs are meeting in, say, Copenhagen or the fora. Of course, human rights is a little more tensional, a little more sort of conflictual or adversarial. But I think even here there are ways and means where governments learn to understand indigenous people's views, indigenous peoples learn to learn about the government's perspectives, and see ways where you can actually get the remedies in the national process, either through the courts or through national human rights commissions, or most importantly, to prevent human rights violations from happening at all, so that you don't have to take recourse. Recourse mechanisms only come in after a violation has occurred. But then there are also other areas where it's not just civil and political rights, but what I would call economic, social and cultural rights, development, education, cultural identity and integrity, where it is probably less conflictual. And this is where I think also this is an avenue where governments and indigenous peoples can work together. But also another major, I think, opportunity in the Permanent Forum is the engagement between indigenous peoples, governments and the UN agencies. Like recently, IFAD, the International Fund for Agriculture Development, a UN agency, has adopted an indigenous peoples policy. It's very progressive. For example, there's a very clear recognition about the free, prior and informed consent, and also a process where the indigenous peoples are part of the IFAD process of engaging on indigenous peoples' issues in say, agriculture and other spheres. So I think one of the limited successes of the Permanent Forum has been that dialogue and interaction between indigenous peoples, governments and UN agencies, because many of the UN agencies have a country presence. So you have FAO dealing with agriculture, you have UNICEF dealing with children's issues, you have UNDP dealing with development issues, and the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights is not present in all countries. We hope that will somehow be addressed. Nor is, for example, UNESCO doesn't have a country presence in all countries, but some of them do. So I think it helps that if you have a centralized understanding between the indigenous peoples, the Permanent Forum and the UN agencies, then the country missions also sort of get on board within the perspective of indigenous peoples' rights, based on, I would say, the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. But I think a continuing challenge for indigenous peoples is, on the one hand, to engage with and participate in the sessions of the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, the sessions of the Expert Mechanism on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and also interact with the Special Rapporteur on the indigenous peoples. But I think it's very, very crucial to remember that there are many other avenues to use within, for example, UN human rights system, the treaty bodies, the special procedures which allow you to promote and protect human rights. And I think indigenous peoples are not making use of those bodies to the optimum level. There's very little, participation in the treaty bodies on the human rights. On the other hand, if you talk about development, then there is also very little engagement in the UN bodies on Commission on Sustainable Development, Commission for Social Development. So I think, although we engage in these three specifically mandated indigenous peoples processes, but we should also engage in those processes. And of course, and ultimately, all of these have to be linked up with the situation on the ground. So as a development worker or as a human rights activist, I think all of us will have to remember that ultimately the change is at home. So however we do it, so we make use of these international avenues. But ultimately, the idea is that we improve the situation at home. So I think that is one link that we need to keep on maintaining in a strong manner as possible.